Everybody, my name is Bennett Tchaikovsky, also known here on YouTube as the Accounting Professor. Welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can become a California CPA. This is a pretty big update, and it's been a little bit of time since I've done my last video, so I just wanted to update you all with this one. And welcome, because I probably may have watched one of the other videos and you saw the link saying, hey, go to this video. Okay. So before I get started, as I always have to do my disclaimer and copyright notice, the information and opinions in this presentation are of myself only, not my employers or any affiliated organizations, including but not limited to Irvine Valley College and the South Orange County Community College District. Presentation is for educational purposes only and does not constitute any legal or accounting advice whatsoever. Please note that the California Board of Accountancy is the final say as to whether or not a course counts towards meeting the educational requirement. And let's go right into it. Now, currently, to become a CPA, right, there's basically four things we need. We got to pass the exam. We have to meet the 150 semester unit requirement. We have to work for a minimum of 1 year under a licensed CPA, either directly or indirectly. And then you have to take what is known as the PETH, or the Professional Ethics Exam, that is administered by Cal CPA. Now, let's go for the first one, though. To sit for the exam, and this is where a lot of people get confused, you do not have to have the 150 semester units completed. What you do have to have completed, though, is to sit, you have to have a bachelor's degree within 6 months, having 24 semester units of accounting, 24 semester units of business subjects. That is to sit for the exam. Where can these classes be taken, right? Educational requirements can be completed at community colleges, $46 a unit for residents of California, universities, or other institutions of higher learning. If you have a degree from a foreign country, I have a video below to kind of go through and to help you out with that. If you need help in terms of determining your educational requirements, I'm going to give you my email address that you can email me. I will basically customize a spreadsheet for you. I will send you a link to that spreadsheet. You'll fill it out, not with any personal information, but just rather with the school you went to, the semester you took the course. You don't even have to do that. The course number, course name, either semester or quarter units. I will then sort it through and then email you back and tell you what you need to do in order to become, to meet the educational requirements to become a CPA. So as we kind of come back over here, once you can sit for the exam, then you need to pass the exam. Remember, they're not looking at the 150 when they're pulling up your application. Now, if you're going to work for Ernst & Young, PwC, Deloitte, or KPMG, or some other top tier firms, they want you to have the 150 done before you start working 75 or 80 hours per week. Just kidding. Maybe I'm not. They want you to have the 150 done. Board of Accountancy, bachelor's degree, 24 accounting, 24 business. That's all they care about, right? Now, in terms of passing the CPA exam, right, this is the great equalizer. No matter if you took good classes or bad classes, you didn't learn anything, you learned a lot. This test is basically going to be the equalizer. And when it comes to you want to take CPA review, whatever you choose to do, Ninja, Becker CPA review, UWorld, whatever you choose to do, make sure you preview it first. Watch the lectures, watch how it's set up. Extremely important for you to go through and do. If you didn't learn something in your undergraduate education, that is absolutely okay. Coming right over here, if I go over here to state and local government concepts, right over here, and I didn't learn that when I was going through and studying in my undergraduate studies or my graduate studies, that's okay. UWorld, Becker, whatever else should be going through and teaching it to you. By the way, if you have an interest in getting a pretty decent discount on the premier package for UWorld, or they call it sounds like a cigarette brand, but if you have an interest in getting like the unlimited, not the platinum plus, but it's an unlimited package, send me an email to the one I'll be sending back. I'll introduce you to the course rep. I can't give the discount code over this because it's pretty good. and they'll take care of you. So let's go back over here to our thing over here. So I got to pass the exam. I have to take, and this is a big change since January 1st. I have to take FAR, financial accounting and reporting, have to take regulation, I have to take audit, and then I have to pick my poison. Unless you've had a lot of experience in tax or in internal controls, you're probably going to take bar, business analysis, and reporting, right? But you got to pass the exam. Once you pass the exam, then the Board of Accountancy will care about the 150. Then they're going to say, okay, did you take an ethics class? Do you have the 6 additional semester units of accounting, right? Then they're going to care about that. But for sitting, it's a bachelor's 24 and 24. Now, the next one after this is you have to work for 1 year under a licensed CPA, either directly or indirectly. Okay. So you're going to be working for 1 year under a licensed CPA. Doesn't have to be from California, but they have to be actively licensed as a CPA in order to sign off on your general work experience. Last thing you have to do is you have to take what is called the PETH. However, this is the big change. The PETH is actually administered by Cal CPA. It is a pretty challenging ethics test. Now, as a result of the exam having changed, right? When I come over here and say, if I go over here to auditing, in the audit section of the CPA exam, what they have gone through and have done is that they have added a lot of different basically parts, say over here, of ethics, right? So you see this right over here that I've actually been doing some of the ethics questions. It's kind of fun. If you take my accounting ethics class at Irvine Valley, you'll see me do videos on those, but those are unlisted because I'm previewing the course. I don't make those public. So right over here, this is an ethics class, and that's pretty much what you're going to be, because this is included here, the Board of Accountancy has said, okay, we're going to make a big change. Basically, we're going to get rid of the PETH. And what they're going to go through and do, and I'll also put a link to this over here, is understanding the change. And this is right now in terms of they're basically trying to go through, and it's pending final approvals. It hasn't come yet, right? But this is going to be a big change, is you're not going to need to take it. Rather, what you're going to be going through and doing is you're going to go over here to basically a course like a place like CPE Depot. And essentially over here, you can basically purchase an all-you-can-eat continuing professional education for about $249. This is way up from what the cost was, but I understand like in these times with inflation, I'll need to kind of go through and do it. But as you can see over here, this is the way I've been taking my CPE for a very, very long time. So it's over here. I could basically renew my ethics membership. My self-study membership is active. So I have another 82 days on my account. The reason why that's important is when you're doing your 80 hours of continuing professional education every 2 years, at least 20 has to be in 1 year. You can't do all 80 in a single year. So you got to space it out. Now, when it comes to this over here, now here's the big change. If you went through and applied before the effective date or after the effective date, you're basically going to have to go through and complete a regulatory review course in order to basically, in lieu of the PETH. That is significantly easier than taking the PETH exam. I have had many students that it took them 4, 5, or even 6 times to go through and pass it. The PETH, very difficult test. By the way, do not cheat on any continuing professional education. Look at what happened to Ernst & Young. They were fined $100 million, mainly for there was internal cheating going on the PETH and some other things. Same thing happened at KPMG. All the firms have these issues. So again, you do not want to cheat on these tests. Not worth it. Okay. So coming back over here. So this is the real big changes. They're going to basically getting rid of the PEth. It's going to be happening. So if you're not yet licensed, or if you have, you can take the PEth, but if it were me, I would probably wait it out because it sounds like it's going to be happening pretty soon. But if you need to get that license, I totally understand. Okay. Now, here is the bigger change that's potentially coming down the pipeline. Okay. This is the big one, right? And this is coming over here is that in accounting. So back in 2014, there was a discussion by the AICPA said that 75% of all active CPAs would be eligible for retirement by 2024. Well, guess what happened? COVID. Okay. Everybody said, I'm not doing this crap anymore. I'm not doing my accounting anymore. I'm going to retire. Most CPAs retire very well, or they plan for their retirement. I'm not doing this anymore. And so they basically get up and said, I'm done with this. And what happened is that you saw a pretty huge, and you still see it today to a certain extent, a pretty huge labor shortage in accounting, right? So when I see my students who are going to a school like USC studying accounting, it's not a bad thing. But if someone's paying 80 grand a year or whatever it costs to study accounting, I know something's wrong, because you could get the education at Fullerton or at a UC for a fraction of the cost. Okay. Or you can go to Ivy, Irvine Valley, and get very even cheaper. But in any event, the greatest concern here is that there has been a shortage of CPAs. And the other problem is that when you look at other states, for example, if I looked at the licensing requirements in New York State, in the state of New York, they say that intermediate accounting has to be taken at an upper division level. Okay. Now, in California, if you look over here, educational requirements can be completed at community colleges, university, or other institutions of higher learning. So it's very, very open. And again, this is from literally a meeting that took place like last week, right? This is Board of Accountancy meeting on May 17th. And so this is really what they're talking about, is that there's going to be two ways for licensure. You still have to pass the CPA exam. That's never going to change, because that's really, in my opinion, what validates the education. Because if you took classes at a community college, four-year school, wherever you took them, master's degree, that's basically going to validate the education. Now, in terms of the different pathways, this is where the big change comes in. Presently, to get the license, it's the 150 plus 1 year of experience. But what they're going to be changing is this. They're basically saying is that if you have a bachelor's degree with a concentration of accounting related courses, and who knows what that means, with an accounting degree or a non-accounting degree plus accounting related courses, which means you could actually meet the educational requirement in 4 years instead of so it's 120 units instead of 150. You need then 2 years of work experience. It could be general or it could be audit. So they're going to tack on an extra year of work experience if you're coming in on the 150 or if you have the accounting degree. Now, second pathway, right? Again, this is the big change right there. If we're under this regime right now, you basically have, and again, this is in discussion, right? They're in preliminary discussions. They're getting public comments. So if you want to join the party and basically have that conversation, join in on the party, they're going to have another hearing. I think it's sometime in July. So when you come in and you're kind of looking at like these different pathways, right? Accounting degree, which is basically 120 units. And then you have a non-accounting degree plus accounting related quarter units, or which really is getting down to the 150. You'll basically need 2 years of experience to get licensed. When I got licensed, that's what the requirement was. It was 2 years of work experience. The second pathway kind of is what it looks like in place now, is that you need a degree plus to get a master's, then you only need 1 year of experience. So that's one of the huge changes that they're going through and proposing. Another one that they're kind of going through and proposing is over here. Presently, you got to do 24 accounting, 24 business, 20 of accounting study, at least 6 have to be in accounting, and then 10 semester units of ethics studies. Another one of the things that they're going through and proposing right now is they're basically saying, okay, you need 27 semester units of accounting, or is that in finance? I don't know. That doesn't seem right to me, but it could be. But they'll say, okay, you need 27 semester units of accounting. And then for business, you'll need 27 semester units in these different areas. I know that this is going to go through and be refined. And then you need 3 semester units of accounting ethics. So they're going to get rid of the things like the philosophy or some of those other different types of courses that are kind of like at the bottom of the requirements. So if I come over here and I look at the current requirements now, this is basically being increased by 3 units. This is being increased by 3 units. This is gone. And then you're just doing the 3 semester units of ethics studies. Again, the key thing they're going to have to go through and do is they're going to have to basically figure this out with all the different 50 states. And this is what the AICPA is kind of going through and doing. So as we kind of look over here, this is going to be a pretty big change. Now, if you are going, what I would advise you to do is to start, if you want to become a CPA, whatever I can do to help you out, I'm here. This is my email address, ivc30tocpa@gmail.com. If you send me an email, I will come back to you. I'll make your own sample spreadsheet. I'll make your own Google sheet. You'll then list out your units. I can basically map things out for you. If you want a discount on UWorld CPA review, send me an email saying, hey, Bennett, send me the code. I won't send you the code. I'm going to make an introduction to you to the UWorld rep who can then try to go through and help you, right? But this is going to be a pretty big change that they're really kind of going through and considering. I think the bigger issue, though, is across all 50 states. I just don't know how they're going to get the states aligned. I think it's going to be a pretty big challenge, but everything changes, and we'll be here to kind of go through and kind of see it. One of the things I will mention is that when they're going through and talking about the pathways here, when you look at the UCs, for example, at UCI, for instance, unless you're in the Paul Mirage School of Business as a business administration major, they do have a minor in accounting. However, which looks like it would satisfy this, but if you're a business economics major, the UCs really don't seem to offer enough accounting courses to meet the demand of the students. And, again, I have a lot of students coming from UCI to take courses at Irvine Valley. And I think that most students will end up opting for the 150 just because it's potentially cheaper. And a lot of times too, the accounting courses that are being taught at the 4-year schools, they're just really hard to get into because they tend to be extremely impacted. And, if they're going to start hiring more accounting faculty, that's great. But I see that kind of being a pretty big challenge to kind of go through and to overcome. But what I do see happening is like needing the 150, passing the exam, and then doing 2 years of work experience. On the work experience, by the way, the Masters of Accounting, I would say that you have to really do a cost benefit analysis. Is an extra year of experience where you're being paid money, right? If I do 2 years and say if I'm making like 60 or 70, 75,000 a year, do I want to go into debt for 30, depending on what school you go to? Do I want to go into debt to get a master's of accounting? By the way, Deloitte offers, I think, 10 scholarships at Cal State Fullerton for their master's in accounting program. They offer 10 scholarships at the University of California at Irvine for their master's in accounting program. So you can go there for free and your academic tuition will be paid for, but you still have to pay for parking. You're still going to have to go through and pay for living expenses. So it's kind of a trade-off. Do I want to work an extra year or would I rather go through and get a master's degree? It's going to be up to you. But if this is the direction they end up going into, um, that's going to be kind of a decision that you'll have to go through and make. Personally, I think the 2 years of experience is actually, it's a good thing. Um, I think it's the more experience you have in terms of getting your CPA license, that's really important. Now, the one thing I will say, and this again is my opinion, I think the big problem right now is in terms of getting that experience, what I have seen from students, and I have this conversation many times with students, is that they're working in accounting, but there's not a CPA there to sign off on their work. And that's going to be a problem that we're going to have to try to go through and overcome. The other problem is too, is that they may be working for a CPA, but like myself, I went through the ringer. I had to go through and do 2 years of audit when I was back at Coopers and Lybrand, now PwC, tells you how old I am. But when I was going back and doing the class, doing my experience at Coopers, it was a lot of work. You had to basically, and that audit sign off is pretty comprehensive. So I think they're going to have an issue with, they may seem as though like they're trying to go through and satisfy it, but I think they're going to have to do a massive amount of education with existing CPAs telling them, hey, if you're signing off on someone's general experience, if you look at the general experience requirement, I'm just going to pull this up really quickly. So right over here, this is a certificate of attest experience, right? So when you look at my CPA license, you'll see that I have an A on it, right? So if I come over here, look at all of these questions for the qualifying experience. This is big deal, right? This is really asking the evaluator to go through and basically say if you've gone through and have done all of this type of work to get that audit license, to sign off on audit reports, which I've never used it, but this is what you have to go through and do. And most firms generally will sign after 2 years if you want the attest licensure sign off. Now you compare this, right? You're comparing this over here, right? Just like look at this thing like, wow, that just looks like a monster. Woof. Compare it to this. Yeah. General accounting experience may include providing any type of service or advice involving the use of accounting, attest, compilation, management advisory, financial advisory, tax, or consulting skills. To qualify, experience shall have been performed in accordance with applicable professional standards. This is probably the most vague thing I have ever seen. If an applicant is performing attest services, part of the general experience, it must be performed under the license who has satisfied the attest experience requirement, right? And again, when you're looking at this, you don't really even have to say like what they were going through and doing. And like right over here is that basically the applicant has been supervised or employed by me or my firm for the period herein and has completed the general accounting experience. So as I'm going through and looking at this, that, the certificate of general experience is that this is incredibly general. And where a lot of CPAs that were of my generation, I'll sound like the Who, but of my generation that were going through and signing off on these, a lot of them don't like signing this because they think, oh my God, this is what I had to go through. And I had to sit for all 4 parts of the CPA exam in once. Now, dude, come on. things change, time changes, and it's a general experience. Remember, when you're signing off on someone's general experience as a CPA, they're not signing off on audit reports, right? That has the highest level of risk in terms of everything, right? Tax, very, very different standards. Like in the eyes of the IRS, the enrolled agents, the CPAs are kind of held to be at the same level. So again, as you're going through and looking at this over here, I really think that this is going to be, as the California Board of Accountancy, we're going to have to do a really good job of educating existing CPAs as to what the experience is. That's really what we're going to have to go through and do to help out those CPAs who are going through and needing to get that work experience, because I've seen multiple of my former students, they've passed the exam and they're really having challenges with getting that experience sign off. So that's all I have for today. Exciting stuff. But thank you. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you have questions about any of this, please feel free to reach out to me. As you can see from my mappings, I have been going through and doing quite a lot of them. And this is just in the last month of May. So people are excited to become CPAs. You can absolutely do it. It's just going to take a lot of time, practice, and repetition. And whatever I can do to help you along the way, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, I'll put my email address below that you can send me an email at, and have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you on the next video. Have a good one.